So, today was going to be my YouTube filming day. Finally sitting down in front of the camera and starting my first vlog from the last video that I posted probably 3 weeks ago. But of course, this is what's happening today. I can close that. I was just gonna sit here on the couch, but that's still pretty fucking noisy. I've been meaning to sit down and film this video for, I think, 2 weeks now. And this is the one day that I planned, like, in my calendar to film. And they're redoing the entire parking lot. Like, blowing out all the dirt and the leaves and repainting the lines and stuff like that. That's happening today. So maybe once they're done the leaf blowing part, it'll be okay. I'm still gonna put on like a little bit of makeup for the day, but we'll see what it's like outside by the time I actually sit down to check in with you guys and film the first video that I've posted in a while. It is about an hour later and it's gotten worse. So this is actually hell for me. I am in hell right now. And I think, or I know it's because after spending so much time in the Kootenays and in that environment, particularly out at the cabin, that being back in an environment like this is fucking me up. It's really, really difficult. I wrote about this extensively in one of the last morning Grumble newsletters that I sent out. I'll leave a link for it, whichever side, I can never fucking remember. If you kind of want to dig into a little bit about what I mean when I reference or when I talk about environment, but it's not fun. This isn't fun. Like my body and my nervous system is like on high alert right now and I'm not loving it. I want to sit down and update you guys on everything that happened after my car broke down or was on the verge of engine failure in Castlegar, which was what my last YouTube vlog was about that I posted a few weeks ago. I just wanted to pick it up from there. If you've been following along on Instagram or have been receiving it and reading the Morning Grumble newsletter on Substack, you'll kind of know sort of what ended up happening after that, but I went a little bit MIA after that video, and what I did is I recorded all of these clips of our move out process from the cabin the last 2 or 3 weeks that we were there. I wasn't able to vlog about it or anything like that because we were just too friggin' busy, and Jesse and I were together 24/7 working on making our way out of the cabin itself and everything that we had to do, so there was just no vlogging. I wasn't able to do it. And so I set up my camera so many different times pretty much to capture everything I could that we did when we were moving out, and I have just pieced those together on Final Cut Pro into a video, and I'm just going to walk you guys through sort of like a little story to catch you up on what that last few weeks at the cabin was like, because I've been in Calgary here for the last 2 or 3 weeks and I've been filming and vlogging a lot. I'm just really behind on my editing. So those videos are coming up, but we're gonna start here. I thought to give these leaf blowers a little bit of time to shut the fuck up, that we would go down to Amato Gelato here in Calgary and go get an affogato, which is a little Italian ice cream coffee drink for those of you unfamiliar. Ivy's got a rope.
Sit your rope, Ivy.
She doesn't like the noise either. It's horrible for her. And then hopefully by the time we get back, they'll be done. And once they're actually painting the lines, maybe that will be a little bit quieter. I'm not so much concerned about the noise in the background of this video. I'm just concerned about focusing and not being so distracted. And like hearing that for me is just, I don't know. It's just so hard. It's just so hard. I mean, it's probably harder for me than most people. Okay. So let's go get an affogato and we'll come back and pick it up from there. it's like the only moment that I feel safe is the moment that I get inside my car and shut the door. Or when I get to the apartment and go up the stairs and get into the apartment and shut the door. Everything else feels unsafe. Ungrounded, chaotic, and unsafe. It is no wonder my mental health was at such a rock bottom after so many years spent in the city. I feel so sad for people who are suffering here, but they don't know why, and they never get the chance or the opportunity to relocate to somewhere that restores their mental and their physical health. I don't know, does that make sense? I feel so lucky that I prioritized that and made it a part of my own healing and recovery journey, both physically and mentally. Like, it is so fucking important. It's so important. Okay, off we go. Okay, my camera is probably not going to last that long because it is really hot in here, and it doesn't like staying on for very long when it's very hot anywhere. I got cookies and cream. The best part about going to somewhere like Amato Gelato that has so many different flavors is choosing the flavor that you want to combine with espresso. Usually when I come here, I'll choose a sugar-free flavor. So they usually have 2 or 3 sugar-free flavors available, and they're usually chocolate, vanilla, and coconut, like pretty basic. Sugar hasn't been a part of my diet or a part of my life ever since I was diagnosed with cancer 9 years ago. It's just become so normal for me, but a lot of sugar-free stuff is actually made with you guys probably know this, but like aspartame and maltodextrin and just kind of like shitty artificial toxic sweeteners. And sometimes I wonder if just eating pure, regular, natural, normal sugar is better or worse than getting a sugar-free whatever with crap like that inside of it. Whenever I get a sugar-free something, it's still almost like considered a cheat. So I don't know, I sometimes balance the both of them. And to be honest, I don't know what this gelato is made with. It could be made with high fructose corn syrup. I have no idea. Either way, every time I come here, it's a cheat, regardless of whether or not I choose a sugar-free flavor or I don't choose a sugar-free flavor. I don't think either is actually obviously healthy. Like, this isn't a healthy thing, it's a treat. So I made an exciting decision on the way here, and I was like, I'm gonna get like a normal flavor, like a sugar flavor. And that means that I have like 20 more options than just the 3 sugar-free flavors. So there was a black banana one where I was like, okay, that would be interesting, but I didn't want to chance it because I don't get these very often and they're so precious to me. So I went with cookies and cream because it's obviously just gonna be delicious. So here we go. Yep, I would actually say cookies and cream is probably the only flavor that you should get in affogato. I was here sometime last week when I got the sugar-free gelato, and they had cafe au lait sugar-free and vanilla sugar-free, so I kind of combined the two, but I didn't think I was going to be driving down to Kensington to go to Amato Gelato for an affogato today. It just kind of came to me as an excuse to leave the friggin' apartment because it was so noisy in there. But anyway, I'm going to enjoy this, and then we're going to head back and like see what the situation is so I can actually start like the actual intro to this video and share what I meant to share with you guys from the beginning. Okay, we're back. Parking wasn't as bad as I expected. Let's see what they're up to out here. I think they're done. Oh, the truck is still here. but the lines are repainted. That's the truck in the corner there. No, they look done. They look done. Well, they did a really janky job. Those are so uneven. Okay, this is incredible news. This means that I can actually film my video. Okay, the gang is here. We are ready to set up on my tripod. It's nice and quiet. I can only really hear the birds and some faint beeping from a truck in reverse. But I turned off the fan. I'm probably gonna unplug the refrigerator because it's so loud. And then we are just gonna get into it. Okay, so in the last vlog that I posted to Grumble Farm's YouTube channel, I left you guys on a little bit of a cliffhanger without any follow-ups or updates about what ended up happening afterwards. As I had kind of mentioned before when I started the intro to this video, if you've been following along with me and my, journey and my story anywhere else online, whether that's through Instagram or if you're subscribed to the Morning Grumble newsletter on Substack and you've been keeping up with those, then you'll know that I managed to figure it out and you'll kind of have a little bit of idea of where I ended up and what I'm up to right now. Just in case you don't follow me anywhere else online or you haven't been paying attention to anything else that I've been posting, and that vlog was actually the last time you heard from me, I decided to put together a bunch of clips that I managed to capture over the weeks leading up to our final move out from the cabin. I just wasn't able to take the time to do any kind of vlogging as Jesse and I were getting ready to move out because life was just absolutely crazy. So the best I could do was set up my tripod every time we did something moving related, which was constantly 24/7 throughout those last few weeks, so that I could kind of capture the process and then sit down later to put them together and tell the story of what that was like and what we sort of did those last few weeks after my car randomly was on the verge of engine failure. So that's about as good as the story is going to get for now. If you didn't happen to see that last vlog that I posted, it's probably been 3 weeks now. I posted it 3 weeks ago. It was basically just a long-winded talking head video where I was fighting with my fucking GoPro for overheating and shutting off every 2 minutes. In that video, I was basically talking about, well, I was talking about a lot of things, but I was talking about our exit strategy from the cabin and what the next few weeks and months were bringing our way and sort of like our plan for the next little while. I was also, talking about everything that was coming up for us this summer, and I talked a little bit about where we were moving. It was kind of a soft announcement of like the place that Jesse and I had found and where we were going to be moving to in June. And I also talked about how difficult the process of moving out from the cabin was for me after having fallen so deeply in love with it over the past 9 months. I was filming myself talking while I was driving to a service appointment at Castlegar Hyundai just to get my winter tires switched over to my summer tires. But while I was there, since the dealership is about like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive away, I asked them if they wouldn't mind taking it for a quick test drive to check out this kind of like grumbly, weird rattling noise I was hearing from the front of my car. And it also had quite a bit of low power at lower speeds. When it got up to higher speeds, it seemed to be doing okay, but there was just some weird stuff going on. It didn't sound right and it didn't feel right. And I asked if they could just take it for a quick spin to see if they could just like on the fly diagnose something relatively simple. So they ended up calling me about 5 minutes after I left the dealership. I dropped it off and found a little grassy area to sit down, and I was vlogging a little bit and kind of chatting about stuff. And they called me and told me to come back immediately because some information had come up after they had taken it for a test drive. And I walked all the way back to the dealership and sat down in the office, and they basically told me that my car was on the verge of engine failure. Like, it was bad. I can't remember exactly what they told me and like the specifics of, mechanically what was going on or what they discovered. They didn't have time to do an actual inspection, but just based on a quick one, there was just like a whole shit ton of stuff going on. I honestly, I cannot remember, but there was like shit leaking and like fumes coming up, and there was another thing having to do with the catalytic converter. I don't even know what that is, but just all of this stuff. Like the news was bad. The news was bad. They strongly suggested that I find a ride home and leave the car there with them. But Castlegar, like I said before, is about an hour and a half to 2 hours away. I don't know a single person there. And as most of you guys know, I think Jesse has a literal tumor in his brain that is pressing on the optic nerves behind his eyeballs. So he hasn't been able to drive for a couple of months now. So I was pretty much stranded in Castlegar, and I didn't really have many options. The guys at the dealership asked if I had BCAA, and thankfully I did. It was on the verge of expiring. I didn't know that, but the timing of it was funny. I had BCAA, and once they knew I had BCAA, they said, okay, why don't you try driving it home, just go slow, give BCAA a call if anything bad happens, park it at home, and then in the morning, give BCAA a call and get them to tow it back to us. And that's kind of like, that was all the information I had at the time, and that's kind of where I ended the vlog. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try and drive home now, see you later. So after that moment, I couldn't find a spare moment to film or vlog anything. Shit got crazy. We were down a vehicle. My Tucson is pretty big, so that's the vehicle we were planning to use for a lot of the move. And we were basically down to Jesse's very, very small Hyundai Venue, which is a tiny, tiny little thing, like a fraction of the size of mine. And just with problem solving how we were going to move forward with not having two vehicles anymore, right in the middle of when we were going to be moving our stuff into storage and moving, and me going on this like big pet sitting, using my hands too much, this big pet sitting circuit in Alberta, vlogging was just like the last thing on my mind. Like I could not even fathom doing any kind of vlogging when we were in the moment. It reminded me of when things got really serious with Jonas back in 2023. I was doing a lot of, content stuff and video and vlogging and sharing on Instagram at the time. And when things got really, really difficult and serious with him, actually vlogging and like creating shit and like just sharing stuff online just wasn't mentally possible. Like it wasn't physically possible, and it just wasn't possible in the sense of like time, but my head space just wasn't in it. I was like, I'm not gonna fucking vlog. I just have to like focus and like get through this. So after receiving the news about the state of my car, I did manage to drive home safely. The next morning, I took out my tires from the back of my car so that I could start the process of emptying everything out of it, starting with the little cargo space where my spare tire lives. Going through everything I had stashed in there, I actually found an all over print Jonas Forever beach towel from back in the day when Grumble Farm had an online store, so that was a pretty funny thing to come across. I also took out pretty much everything else, like the fuzzy dog blanket I kept in the back seat for the girls, the dog seat cover that was attached to the backseat headrest, and the cargo liner or cover in my in the very back that I was planning to use for all of my pet sitting jobs in Alberta this summer. I completely emptied out my center console. I actually forgot that was where I was hiding all of my Jonas Forever stickers, so that made my heart really happy when I opened it to see his little face staring back at me. I removed both of the suction mounts I had attached to my windshield for filming and vlogging while I was out and about running errands around the Kootenays. I made sure to remember to grab my glasses. I checked both of my sun visors for some reason, like there would be CDs in there, I don't know. And then I put all of my tires back into my car for storage because like why the fuck not at that point? That night was actually the night the Northern Lights showed up for basically everyone, basically everywhere, which I have to admit made them feel a little less special, but they were still so beautiful, and I was so grateful that we got to see them so brightly in the night sky at the cabin one last time. The next morning, we decided that the best move for the moment would be to have my car towed back down to Castlegar like we had sort of planned at the dealership, so that it could basically sit there for a proper inspection. But the soonest date that they were able to get it in wasn't until June 5th, which was about a month away from the time that I had called them to let them know that I was thinking of bringing it back in for further diagnostics. I really have no idea why the wait was so long, but I've learned to have really low expectations for most things service related out here in the West Kootenays. Things just tend to move at a bit of a slower pace most of the time. Like they literally call it being on Kootenay time out here, so it has nothing to do with people being unfriendly. It's just a little bit of a different pace for sure. This wasn't quite the case with BCAA, however, who dispatched a local towing service out to the cabin property way quicker than I expected, but this is what I mean. When you have low expectations and choose to be relatively easygoing about wait times or delays, it makes it really special when things actually work out better than you thought they would. I don't know. I've just found that taking this approach makes life a little less stressful than it needs to be anyway. And that was it. my little Tucson drifted away down our driveway, disappeared into the trees, and out of sight. One of the most challenging parts about losing my Tucson at this particular moment in time was the fact that Jesse and I had just finally secured a C-can rental at a private storage facility about 20 minutes away, and we'd been planning to make as many trips as we needed to get all of our bins and all of our stuff out of the cabin to prepare for our actual move-out date on May 27th. Since our move-in date to the guest home on the farm, which I actually talked about in that very last vlog I shared, wasn't until June 18th, kind of a random day in the middle of the month, but we needed somewhere to store our things in the meantime because they had nowhere to go. We had nowhere to go too, but without my Tucson, the only thing we could do was make more trips with smaller loads of stuff in Jesse's tiny little venue. So driving to and from that storage lot with just a few bins and items at a time became something we had to do pretty regularly over the next 2 weeks since my car was towed away and we didn't have access to it anymore. Thankfully, when we moved into the cabin last fall, we didn't arrive with very many things anyway, since the cabin was offered to us fully furnished. The living room couches and the chairs and the side and coffee tables, the end tables, the flat screen TV, the bed frames, the dining room table and chairs, like pretty much all of it except for my mattress and the sectional that we ended up putting out on the deck. But the guest house on the farm that we were preparing to move into is actually a fraction of the size of the cabin itself. It's only about 350 or maybe 400 square feet tops. So it's definitely a downsize from the cabin, which was about 1,400 square feet in total, including the loft space upstairs. Putting our stuff in storage for the time we have to wait until our move-in date on the farm on June 18th was definitely necessary, but we'll also need to keep most of it in the C-can over the next year, since the guest house is so small and it's actually also fully furnished, so there's just no room or no storage for what little we do have. In an attempt to downsize and lighten our load a little further, and also to try and get a little caught up financially, Jesse and I also spent a lot of time throughout the rest of May listing most of our larger, bulkier stuff on Facebook Marketplace. I was so sad to let go of these beautiful office desks that we had invested in for the cabin's gorgeous loft space when we first moved in, which we decided to use as an office for video editing and writing and stuff like that. We sold our inflatable Aquaglide stand-up paddleboards and kayaks, which also made me sad because they were our first quality sponsored products that were sent to us by a brand when we first moved out to the Kootenays back in 2020, and we had so many adventures out on Kootenay Lake, both with and without the pugs and with Jonas on these inflatables, but they actually went to a stand-up paddleboard instructor who was preparing to leave British Columbia for a trip down to his second home in Guatemala, so they obviously found a good home with someone who's going to take them on many more adventures, so that made me happy. We also sold our Stihl chainsaw, which once again made me sad because we had only bought it 9 months ago to prepare for cabin living, and it had cut up so much fucking wood for us in the forest that kept us and the girls warm throughout the winter. I took down the hummingbird feeders that I had so excitedly made hummingbird food for and hung up when I saw the first one show up earlier this spring, and that was also a sad thing to do for me. The reason I decided to take them down and not simply keep them up for the hummingbirds after we left is because hummingbird feeders have to be changed every few days with fresh sugar water or else they can get sick, and obviously I didn't want that. So down they came. I washed them and then I dried them and then I put them back in the cupboard for somebody else to enjoy. We climbed up and took down the robin cam that we had set up to watch a mama robin raise her 3 little babies just a day or 2 after they had fledged. The robin cam is something I didn't even really get a chance to vlog about and to share here on YouTube, but it was a really special experience to witness. We took down the twinkly starlights that we had hung up in the cabin's archway, which was by far one of my favorite features of the whole entire cabin, and having these lights hung up just made the place that much more magical and that much more special. These lights were gifted to me by an internet friend and big time supporter of my videos and all the things I do online, so thank you, Samantha. We will find a place to hang them up once we're in the guest home on the farm, I promise. And then really, our final week was just spent cleaning. I cleaned and I cleaned and I cleaned every single corner of that little cabin. I started with the upstairs loft space, sweeping and vacuuming and mopping the floors and the area rug that was already there when we moved in. I deep cleaned the shit out of the stove and the stovetop. I am pretty sure that that stove hadn't been that clean since the day it was first installed into the cabin's kitchen by the time I was done with it. And I also deep cleaned the fridge, of course, while watching the Nomadic Introverts vlogs on YouTube because I've really been enjoying following along with their adventures lately. I highly recommend their channel. One of the very last things I did, actually, was mow the lawn one last time. It was hell, because our last week at the cabin was basically nonstop freezing cold rain. So the grass was extremely thick and wet and was basically just turning into a heavy kind of sludge in the bottom of the mower that I kept having to clear out. It was so fucking annoying. But you know what else the rain brought in those final few days at the cabin? A rainbow. And not just part of a rainbow, but a full entire arc of a rainbow right over Kootenay Lake. This video clip doesn't even do it justice at all because it was just filmed with my iPhone, but it was absolutely magnificent. And I'm sure most of you guys won't be surprised to hear me say that seeing it stirred up all of the love in my heart for Jonas, who I thought might be telling me that even though I was really sad to be leaving, that good things were on the way and that he would make sure of it. On the very last day, we decided to commemorate our time at the cabin and in the community where the cabin was located by going out for dinner at the only restaurant located in the community inside of the Ainsworth Hot Springs Resort. Our favorite thing here is the bison French onion soup and the bannock. It is the singular best French onion soup and bannock you will ever try in your life. So if you're ever in the West Kootenays, I would highly, highly recommend it. And then it was straight home to bed for our very last sleep at the cabin. The next morning, our actual move out day ended up confusing some people when I posted a few Instagram stories about saying goodbye. I did explain what was happening with our move out in a previous vlog, but I am well aware that not everyone watches them or pays close attention to the details and what I'm trying to say. Basically, I was headed out to a pug sitting job in Edmonton, which is about an 11-hour drive east into BC's neighboring province of Alberta. Jessie, on the other hand, stayed back to put the cabin to sleep by shutting off the well water lines and the power supply and locking up the shop and the cabin itself before his mom came to pick him up and drive him back for a temporary stay at her place in another village about an hour away while he awaits brain surgery a little later in June. This actually worked out well for both of us while we wait for our move-in date on the farm on June 18th, since I can't stay at Jessie's mom's place with the dogs because she's allergic. I packed up everything I was traveling with, which was also everything that belonged to me. I didn't leave a single thing behind in the cabin. I packed it all into Jessie's tiny little Hyundai Venue, which I was obviously driving to Alberta since my Tucson was still in the shop in Castlegar and Jessie can't currently drive right now anyway. I made the car as comfy, cozy as possible for the girls with their fluffy cloud beds and their little Sherpa blankets, and of course Ivy's little Pingu or penguin, which has been her comfort toy for years. Jessie said his goodbyes to the girls as I carried them each out to the car and set them up in the back seat to prepare for our long, long drive. Ivy has some pretty serious travel anxiety about being in the car, so being loaded in and knowing that we were about to head out on a long trip wasn't her favorite thing in the world, but she's a tough cookie and she ended up being fine. She was fine. She's fine. Everything is fine. The last thing I did was pack up two of the most important things, aside from Fern and Ivy, obviously, Jonas and Chloe's pine needle urns, which I created an entire YouTube video about back on Jonas's 14th heavenly birthday in January of this year. I really encourage you to actually check that video out if you have the time and space for it. It's probably my favorite YouTube video that I've ever made. Getting ready to drive away from the cabin for the very last time was a pretty surreal experience. I had been thinking about this exact moment ever since surrendering to the fact that we had to make the decision to move, and here we were, the morning of. While I felt sad that I would never find myself parked out in front of the cabin again, I was also really excited for my trip to Alberta and to pug sit my friend Shay's Grumble, and I was just excited for the future in general. I felt both things at once. The cabin taught me so much about what I value and the way I want to feel in the home and the environment that I live in. The view that I look out at each day and the birds and other sounds of nature that I hear, the fresh mountain air that I breathe in, the freedom of having so much space and so much privacy all to myself. I sometimes fear that living at the cabin has set the bar a little too high for me, that my expectations about what I want out of this life and the things I want to achieve and accomplish regarding home and land ownership are even more unrealistic than before this experience. But a girl can dream, because who knows, maybe one day those dreams will finally come true. I'll see you guys really soon in Edmonton.